Despite the fact that there's going to be 2 brand new next-gen consoles, Super Mario 3D All-Stars is still taking the world by storm in 2020, even though it's just a compilation of 3 games from a long time ago with 0 improvements. However, the fact that there aren't any improvements has led to a lot of criticism in regards to Nintendo's limited-time compilation. One of the biggest comparisons being made is with Crash Bandicoot's Sane Trilogy from 2017 that really went above and beyond by redoing all the graphics, adding bonus features, and all while keeping the price at $40, whereas Super Mario 3D All-Stars is costing at a full $60 retail price. However, just because the Insane Trilogy had more work put into it and cost less money, does that really make it a better value than 3D All-Stars, or is Mario really that dang good? Well, sit back in your Uncle Palmer's chair before he sits on you, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, Matlock's right-hand man, CameronAllOneWord, to tell you which compilation has more value between Super Mario 3D All-Stars and the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Alright, so I know you might assume that I'm just gonna blindly give Mario the win here since I make a lot of Nintendo videos on this channel, and to be honest, I'm gonna tell you right now that Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy are all definitely better than Crash Bandicoots 1 through 3, and I don't think that's a very controversial statement to make, but the fact that the Insane Trilogy went all out beyond just copy and pasting the old games onto a cartridge and calling it a, which they probably could have gotten away with, really makes putting 3D All-Stars in the hot seat for a one-on-one confrontation more than fair. And look, obviously you could find the Insane Trilogy online for much cheaper than you're probably ever gonna be able to find 3D All-Stars for, but for the sake of this video, let's just stick to the standard retail prices. And even though some people consider the Insane Trilogy to be 3 remakes, I consider them to be remasters despite the graphical upgrades, bonus levels, and extra characters, since the original gameplay was for better or worse left untouched for the most part, even though it was pretty much remade from scratch. And when I say remade from scratch and for the most part, I'm actually referring to the worst part about the Insane Trilogy, and that all 3 titles use the physics from the 3rd game, which makes playing the first one in particular considerably harder than the PS1 version. And while I don't think this is the worst atrocity ever committed in the history of mankind or anything like that, I've gotta say that this is pretty lame. I mean, to be fair, the controls and physics from the 3rd game do feel the most modern of the trilogy, but Crash Bandicoot 1 wasn't made with these controls and physics in mind, so it definitely feels off falling faster after releasing the jump button for the hit detection to be less forgiving. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of the camera in Mario 64, and I think it'd make 3D All-Stars way better to update it, but when it comes to the physics, I really don't think you should rock the boat at all unless you're planning on doing a complete remake from the ground up. And yeah, I know that Mario Maker altered the physics of the original games as well, but that's still an entirely new game altogether, and even then, I honestly wish they'd have left the physics completely untouched. Fixing things that make older games frustrating is one thing, and it's nice to add extra characters, levels, music, and boosting the graphics up and all that, but you really can go too far. And again, the physics of the 3rd Crash Bandicoot game don't necessarily make the first one unplayable or anything like that, but it just confuses me that the developers would go so far to cram this game with all kinds of bells and whistles only to make such a puzzling mistake. Although, to be fair, they did seem to at least do this intentionally rather than being some kind of an error or oversight, and at the end of the day, it's not really that big of a botch, and you know, the graphics are pretty nice too and all that, but at the risk of sounding like a Nintendo fan man, did the Mario games really need graphical upgrades in the first place? I mean, you can make the argument that if a developer's asking people to play the same games again, that there should be something different about them to make them worth playing through again. And normally I'd agree with that, but not when there aren't very many major improvements that could be made in the first place. And sure, it was pretty cool when they updated the graphics to Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, but I don't even think the Super Nintendo was capable of straight up emulating NES games. So even though the upgraded visuals definitely made the original Mario trilogy better on the Super Nintendo, they probably didn't have much of a choice back then. And yeah, Mario 64's graphics haven't really aged all that well, but honestly, I really don't think Mario Sunshine or Galaxy really need any upgrades whatsoever. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that it'd have been a complete waste of time for Nintendo to have put any kind of effort into improving the graphics of these 2 games specifically. And you know what, if you're not gonna update the visuals in 2/3 of the collection, then I feel like it would have just been weird to only give the first game a boost. And honestly, as blocky as Mario 64 is, a lot of people are kinda attached to these visuals for nostalgic purposes. So all in all, I just don't think there's that much value into putting the time and effort into enhancing the graphics for these 3 Mario games, whereas the original Crash trilogy on the PS1 really did need the update, even more so than Mario 64 did. And besides, as much as people like complaining about the fact that Nintendo's releasing older content, wouldn't it be way worse if they were spending even more time and resources on older games instead of focusing on newer stuff? But to be fair though, it kinda drives me crazy that all the extras in the Mario 64 DS game are probably gonna remain stuck on that version until the end of time, and it's hilariously lame that Mario 64 and the 3D All-Stars collection's not even gonna be in widescreen. Although, to be fair, Nintendo did at least do a little bit more than copy and pasting by replacing the button commands in the game to match up with the Switch's controller, aside from the GameCube's X button still being above FLUDD though, but I mean, you're still using the X button on the Switch anyway, so I mean, you don't really have to change it. So even though Nintendo could have done a little bit more with 3D All-Stars, it's still way less lazy of a compilation than the original Mario All-Stars was on the Wii, and they still managed to find a pretty decent solution for recalibrating the pointer controls in Galaxy to work with the gyro controls. But even so, I still think it's pretty friggin' lame that you can't play Sunshine with the GameCube controller when the Switch has a friggin' adapter that only one other game takes advantage of. One of the biggest questions I had with this compilation was how they were going to control FLUDD's water pressure, since the Pro Controller doesn't have spring triggers that were in the GameCube controller, but I guess Nintendo's solution ended up being to just say frig it and don't even try. It's kinda lazy, but to be fair, I don't really remember there being any parts in the game that ever required spraying something with partial force, so it's really not that big of a deal, but it is still a bit odd. Plus, let's not forget about the fact that this game's only limited for a 6-month window, which is just plain outrageous. Honestly, I believe that Super Mario 3D All-Stars is easily worth $60, seeing as how Super Mario Sunshine and Galaxy probably would have sold for $20 separately if it were on the eShop, or even $50 like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD were, and meh, I guess we could round Mario 64 up to $20, I suppose, but honestly, I still kind of feel like Mario Galaxy 2 not being included just makes the whole thing feel incomplete as opposed to the Crash Trilogy where, you know, everything's there. Again, as far as the actual games themselves go, though, I don't think any of the 3 titles in the Crash Trilogy could really compare to any of the 3 Mario games in the All-Stars collection. I mean, Nintendo really went all out with each one of these with the honest intent of trying to make the best game ever made, whereas Crash Bandicoot was more or less Naughty Dog just throwing things against the wall and trying to find something that sticks. And don't get me wrong, Crash Bandicoot definitely stuck, but after it stuck, they went ahead and cranked 2 more games out as fast as possible. And while Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 definitely made a lot of improvements and are absolutely classics in their own right, it still feels appropriate that they were all included into the same compilation, whereas Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy all feel completely different from each other and offer totally unique experiences. It is pretty lame that Nintendo didn't put Mario 64 on widescreen or allow support for the GameCube controller, but at the very least, it is nice to know that Nintendo didn't waste too much time on a compilation that could have been better spent making something completely original. But I'm also glad that they didn't take any unnecessary liberties to change the core games too much, even if the main reason for that is more to do with laziness than anything else. So although it costs $20 more, I still personally think that you're gonna have a lot more fun with Super Mario 3D All-Stars than the Crash and Sane Trilogy, because even though Nintendo didn't put as much work into the compilation, they still put more than enough effort into the original games to where they're never really gonna need to be updated all that much outside of a few minor issues here and there. However, I can only give Mario the victory between the months of September of 2020 and March of 2021, because after that, these games are gonna be out of production for no good reason. And I'm sorry, $20 extra is one thing, but having to beat scalpers up in front of Caldors is way too much to ask when you can just go ahead and buy the Insane Trilogy whenever and wherever you want. But anyway, what do you think? If you were trapped in a bomb shelter for the rest of your life, would you rather only have access to Insane Trilogy, or would you rather have access to Super Mario 3D All-Stars? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody at some point. But let me tell you, if there's 2 people who'd make excellent trilogies, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Austin Garcia and Alejandro Tamez. If you want to be badasses like these 2, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and silly rewards in the mail. Send pictures or videos of you rocking merch if you want to make cameos in my videos, and follow me on Twitch if you ever want to hang out whenever I play video games sometimes. My name's CameronAllOneWord, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.